I'm so excited to bring up our next guest. There was a primary this week in, I believe it was altogether 6 states. We've been talking a lot about Wisconsin. We talked to Matt McNeil a little bit about Minnesota heading into that primary night. And I think that this kind of tells you a little bit about where the Democratic Party is right now. Progressives won up and down the ballot. A lieutenant governor beating a sitting congresswoman for Senate. A Democrat socialist knocked out an AIPAC-backed candidate for Congress. And even Amy Klobuchar, the most establishment name in the state, had to fight off a 27-year-old trans candidate before cruising to the governor nomination. Very strange. I was not following this race at all. John Parker, co-host of the Gaily Show here. The Gaily Show heard here on WCPT joins us. He knows the ins and outs, I'm guessing, about everything that happened. So tell us, tell us a little bit about what the Democrats shared with us about themselves in Minnesota, John. First of all, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, good. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So what does this tell us about the Democrats in Minnesota?
I think that it's really interesting how let's take one race, the Flanagan versus Craig race, right? The polls going into that race were pretty tight, which is different than what happened in Michigan, right? That Senate race between Abdul El-Sayed and I'm blanking on her name, where he was going to win in a blowout, right? In Wisconsin, Francesca Hong, Assemblywoman Hong, was going to win in a blowout, right, in that race. And then it was a very, very tight race. In Minnesota, it was the reverse of that. Polls showed a very tight race going into it, and then Peggy Flanagan won by 20 points on Tuesday night. I mean, it was, as we were watching the returns coming in, I was looking at the maps and I'm like, this is bad for Craig's campaign. This is really bad. I mean, her congressional district was not voting for her and the numbers that she needed. So that was a big, I think, win for progressives. Also in Congressional District 2, which Craig gave up because she was running for Senate, the progressive candidate won. And he was on our show. I talked to him a week before the primary, and he was being outspent 32-1 by dark money.
Wow.
400,000 of it from AIPAC alone. And the remainder of it for AIPAC money went to a candidate, State Senator Klein. And then another 700-ish thousand came from 314 Action Fund, which isn't AIPAC aligned. They kind of became into being because of AIPAC funding, and they claim they don't have it anymore, but historical ties.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to be outspent 32-1, and I am curious if there was a Matt Little effect, if you will, in CD2, and that's why she didn't do as well, because he is clearly to the left of her. And he won overwhelmingly in his district, in that district as well. So I think that it was really exciting to see that Minnesota's progressive wing of the DFL was very strong, was out in force on Tuesday night. So I think it's good news.
I feel like it is good news. And again, like you mentioned, the win by Flanagan by 20 points, and also now going to be the first Native American senator of Minnesota, if successful, which we think possibly, maybe. How are we feeling? I mean, you're supposed to just, like, first of all, when you're a candidate, you're supposed to talk in the affirmatives, right? When we win.
Right.
So we need to do that, right? But go ahead.
Right. So a fun fact about Minnesota. Minnesota has not elected a Republican to statewide office since 2006.
Okay.
Right. So I'm feeling pretty good. Now, sometimes those races are tighter than they should be.
Sure.
But I'm feeling pretty good about Lieutenant Governor Flanagan's chances in November. And that was actually a pretty historic race because Angie Craig would have been the first out LGBTQ senator for Minnesota. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan is going to be the first Native American senator. So we were going to make history either way. And also because Michelle Tafoya won her nomination, for MAGA, that will mean that either way, Minnesota will remain one of the few states in the union that has two women representing them in the Senate, which I also think speaks to Minnesota's forward thinking about they are not afraid to have women lead.
Yes.
And also Amy Klobuchar is going to be cruising here to the governorship. I say that pretty confidently, but you never can tell.
Right.
Given the fact that she used to be the county attorney for Hennepin County, and then she's been a senator serving on armed services, very clearly anti-Trump. You know, when we find out this week that Trump and the DOJ was investigating nonprofits and labor unions, trying to find Antifa, quote unquote, and to intimidate them because of Operation, the resistance to Operation Metro Surge, that resonates. People are voting and looking for a fighter against Trump. That is not Michelle Tafoya. They are not going to vote for Michelle Tafoya because they know he is laying the groundwork to do it again. That is when we talk to people on the ground, they are convinced that he is going to redo Operation Metro Surge, and voters in Minnesota do not want that.
Well, and that's part of the loss for Craig, isn't it? Because of voting for expanding the powers of ICE, as well as voting on the Laken Riley Act, right?
Yes, but fun fact, if Amy Klobuchar wins in November, she will get to name her successor because she can't serve in the Senate anymore. So in January, she could actually name Angie Craig to her seat. And I'm really curious if that happens, because if it does, then, now current Congresswoman Craig could use that time to sort of address those concerns about the Laken Riley vote, against whether or not she's going to fight Trump, et cetera. So the Minnesota Reformer, a lot of other newspapers and media outlets are sort of saying, Senator Klobuchar, you need to tell us, who are you going to nominate in your place there? Because that is going to be a factor. And we'll see if she says anything or not. She does tend to keep things close to the vest, but Angie Craig could end up in the Senate.
That's wild. Yeah, that's a wild one. By the way, I believe we will should Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton be successful, we will also have two women in the Senate representing Illinois.
Fantastic.
Senator Tammy Duckworth, and then I feel confident about Senator Juliana Stratton being elected. At any rate, so okay, I mentioned this. I can't. I remember during the pandemic, I was doing one of my first shows in person in Columbus, Indiana, and there were people in a diner. Like, I didn't know like the whole conspiracy. This was like after January 6th. So it was that summer, maybe it was 2021. I just didn't know the depths which these conspiracies had a grip on people's imaginations, and what Lindell was spreading about, like, how Trump was actually still a shadow president, that he was going to be back in office by that summer, by August, all these things. So when I found out that he was running and did not even secure the nomination of his own party, but Trump came in and endorsed him, tell us a little bit about this race, because now he's saying that it was all rigged because he didn't win.
That race was bonkers. So first of all, at the nominating convention, they went with Kendall Qualls, who is a businessman, the delegates. They said, we're going to give our backing to Kendall Qualls over House Speaker Lisa Dameth. Then Trump in July, end of June, early July, says, no, I want Lindell, who, of course, is a CEO, of course, settled a $1.3 billion lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems just in July because they sued him for defaming them because he kept saying that, they rigged the election and voter fraud, et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, Mike Lindell, who loses by tens of thousands of votes, says on Wednesday morning there were anomalies, and they are looking into these anomalies of how he could possibly have lost. Weirdly, well, no, not weirdly. I mean, President Trump hates losers, so I'm sure this is why he hasn't said anything about Lindell. But he did tweet on Tuesday morning, or what is it, when he posts on Truth Social, that, Mike Lindell deserves a big win. And of course, a big win was in all caps. But it's interesting that didn't carry the day. That, we were really curious to see if voters were just going to back Lindell because of, it's a Trump endorsement. And when the returns started coming in and I was looking at the heat maps, I saw it too. Like with Craig, I'm like, this is not good news for Craig. And you could see it where the votes were coming in. I'm like, the areas that Lindell should have been mopping the floor with his, it wasn't happening, particularly in greater Minnesota. So
wow.
It's yeah.
Well, because there are parts like I think that I can't remember how many there were in Indiana. I want to say it was like 6 Republicans who lost their seats because Trump came in and endorsed other people. In particular, there were legislators in Indiana who lost their seats who had voted against gerrymandering, right? The demands that Trump had come in with to strip the remaining Democrats of their seats. Yeah. So I mean, and as you mentioned, it sounds as though Minnesotans want a fighter. But how much is areas that you mentioned that you would think would vote for Lindell, because Illinois is pretty red. We have Mary Miller, who the day of January 6th, this gets lost in all the chaos of what happened that day, but I don't know if you remember, but she was on stage. I was out for a walk because it was actually unseasonably nice that day, and she was talking about how Hitler had some things right. Right. And so, oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, that he got some things right. That gets lost in the chaos of that day. And so, at any rate, so what I'm to suffice to say, we have some very deeply red Trump parts of Illinois. We're blue, but things change and it could go the other way. Is Minnesota? I mean, you mentioned that you haven't had any statewide Republicans hold office. We have. We had a governor of Illinois, Governor Rauner. We had a budget impasse, and so I mean, are there vulnerable parts of the state, or is it pretty much purple?
This is where I give a lot of credit to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Her operation is a get out the vote operation. She churns out votes every single cycle. And I think that when you get the metro to turn out in Minnesota, it makes it incredibly difficult. I think also Rochester, Minnesota, which is in southeast Minnesota, home to Mayo Clinic, they have been trending more and more blue. And I think a lot of that is because the Mayo Clinic is there and everybody's, has some type of relationship to Mayo. When he's come out so hard against science and medicine and has gone all in on Maha, I think that changed a lot of doctors who may have been more amenable to the fiscal conservatism, saying, wait a minute, what is going on here? They're not on board with that. So we've seen Rochester moving more and more blue. I think that we may be seeing in the Arrowhead region, which is sort of like, if you know the map of Minnesota, like that little hook on Lake Superior where Duluth is the major port there. I think we may be seeing a return to the Democrats getting reconnected to labor and to working class voters up there. So I think that we're seeing a trend, I would believe, in Duluth, more blue as well. So when you start to see this happening, it makes it much more harder because, I mean, what's the saying? Geography doesn't vote. Yeah. And a lot of counties in Minnesota may vote red, but there's only 1,000, 3,000 votes there. And you just can't overcome. There is no population center outside of the Twin Cities that can overcome what's happening there in Minnesota, which is why it's really hard for Republicans to win statewide races.
Interesting. We have a county in Illinois that used to be solidly red near Chicago, DuPage County, and they have done, like your point with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. I'm curious about what I'm always curious about people who are able to get the vote out because it is going to be crucial. I mean, that's why Trump is doing everything he can to throw people off the voter rolls. What are folks talking about now that we've got the primary? I know it's only a couple days, but how are people in Minnesota feeling, having been at the tip of the spear with what was it, Metro Blitz?
We were Operation Metro Surge. I think it was Chicago.
We were Midway Blitz.
Blitz.
Yeah, I can't.
It's hard to keep track of all of them.
Yeah.
This is still resonating, I think, and I think that's ultimately one of the things that sank Congresswoman Craig's campaign was that vote for Lake and Riley. I think the fact that it happened, it is still burned on so many people's memories. I think there are too many people. Well, no, there potentially aren't enough people who believe that he will do it again. There are a lot of organizers and activists in the Twin Cities that are basically saying that if he wins Congress, he will do it again and come back to Minnesota, which is why you keep seeing, and the reason why we believe that is the continuance of investigations into Minnesota. And now knowing that they were just breaking today or this week, that they were investigating groups for being Antifa. The reason why they came in the first place, or the pretext, was fraud. Right. We had to go in and send all these, 3,000 agents because there's so much fraud happening. So if they're continuing to try to lay the groundwork for fraud, it just makes people believe, okay, this is going to happen. So I think that people first and foremost do not want Trump and his agents back in Minnesota. I think that there was a fraud issue that happened here, it wasn't linked to Governor Walz. It wasn't linked to the Democratic Party. It was a lot of bad actors. And so I think that there are folks who want that cleaned up. So I think that is going to be an issue that plays out in November. But I don't think they're going to want a Democrat who cleans up the fraud and will stop Trump and Operation Metro Surge Part 2. They're not going to want a Republican who's going to let Trump come back in and supposedly try to clean up fraud, but probably won't because they're not really great at governing.
I mean, I'm just saying. I will say one of the things I most respect and admire out of Minnesota. Well, there's a lot of things out of Minnesota. I can I tell you a secret. I did some research on. It's a secret to a whole audience. I have an adult son who has severe disabilities, and I know that Illinois, believe it or not, Illinois is actually one of the worst in the country when it comes to services for people with disabilities, in particular as they age out of programs like school and things like that. And so I did some research, and the top 5 places for me to retire are Norway, Australia, Ireland, Scotland, and Minneapolis. Minneapolis has great programs for adults, and that's only if things stay where they are politically. I mean, obviously, with what's going on for cuts and funding and all the support services, that could change everywhere. So we do walking tour on YouTube. We do walking, like how people do these like walking videos. So we're exploring the different neighborhoods of Minneapolis. I've been there. I've performed there. I love Minneapolis, and I do worry. But what I admire right now in the last few months is what the Attorney General has done with the investigations into the murders of Alex Preddy, Renee Good, trying to get because I didn't realize until this summer that she didn't even have the car. They had had it stored somewhere. They were never able to process the evidence, but that they are charging ICE agents as they should be charged and prosecuted.
So this is where there's more good news from Tuesday night. The progressive candidate to replace Mary Moriarty, who herself was the progressive candidate and who was in charge. So there was Attorney General Ellison, and then there was Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty. Those two were sort of the tip of the spear to go after ICE and DHS and the Trump administration, DOJ, to get justice for Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good. Mary Moriarty was pilloried. She was attacked on every front while she was a Hennepin County attorney. She's like, okay, I'm done. Someone else. Cedric Frazier, it's a nonpartisan role, so the top 2 vote getters move forward to November. But Cedric Frazier, who is the progressive candidate, he came out on top on Tuesday. So that hopefully means that in November he will win. And he has been very outspoken about going after ICE and DHS. And so I really believe that folks will vote for him because they want to see justice for Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. And they want someone who's going to take the fight to the Trump administration and DOJ. And that would be Cedric. So I am hopeful. I'm pretty sure that Attorney General Ellison will win re-election in November, and I hope that Hennepin County residents will also choose Cedric Frazier because those will be 2 fighters that will keep going. And Keith Ellison has been. The gloves are off. He does not. He is not holding back at all, and he believes very deeply in the work that he is doing right now. We had him on, and it doesn't matter what the issue is. When I talked to him in June, he is on all fronts going after Trump, and he is not shying away. He is building coalitions. He's not leaving anybody behind. And I just think that it's really good to know that Cedric Frazier is in the lead and that he will have a partner, and that Attorney General Ellison, rather, will have a partner in Cedric Frazier.
Well, I'm so grateful for your insight. Again, we've been talking to John Parker, co-host of The Gaily Show, along with Jim Pounds. Their unapologetic hour-long program is The Gaily Show. You can hear that right here on WCPT. And I'm so grateful for your recap of the Minnesota primary results. Let's talk again soon. Let's not make it so long. I know that it can be like challenge. There's so many things. It's hard to grab onto one thought sometimes. Fortunately, I have people here to help me out. So Andy and Jerry and our whole crew here, Lady B. So thank you so much, John Parker. Say hi to Jim for me.
Thank you. I will do. Hey, Lady B, by the way.
She says hi. Take care. Have a great night, my friend.
You too.
Thank you.